This is Governor Rick Perry. Governor, good to see you. How are you?
It's good to be with you. Welcome to Texas.
It's soon to be a citizen, I hope.
Indeed.
The president said that you made sense. The conversation was constructive. What do you say?
Well, I'm glad the president thinks that what I said makes sense, because we've been saying it for many years now. Since back in 2005, we've known that this border was a real issue. And particularly in 2009, we had signaled the president and signaled Homeland Security of the massive amount of problems that could occur, and they needed to secure the border. Yep. And I will suggest to you, had the money been spent back in those days to put the National Guard troops on the border to bolster the Border Patrol, we wouldn't be seeing the issues that we have today. And it is a humanitarian crisis, and that, I will suggest, is the reason the president needs to come to the border to see it himself. I think about the criticism that George W. Bush received when he didn't go to New Orleans at Katrina. This is no different. This president needs...
Did you ask him?
Absolutely. The first thing I asked him when I got on to Air Force One, I said, Mr. President, I said, I really want you to come and see this, because I said this is important for you to absorb as a father, but more importantly as the President of the United States, to see the humanitarian crisis and to also understand how you can move the Border Patrol forward, away from the 45 miles or so back they are today, to be right on the border, to see what the Department of Public Safety is doing with our gunboats in the river to stop the criminal activity that's going on. That's what the president needs to see. He needs to understand instinctively and intuitively and with his own two eyes what's going on that border.
So you think he's making a mistake by not coming? And he talked about, you know, well, I sent this guy, Jay, whatever his name is, down 6 times, Jay Johnson.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that if George Bush had said, well, I sent my FEMA director down multiple times, that he would have still been criticized greatly, because you need to go. That's what governors do. That's what presidents do. When there are natural disasters, when there is crises like this, a president needs to be there to show the American people, number one, that he understands.
You were first invited for what I guess you viewed as a photo op to meet the president on the tarmac, and you said, no, but if you're willing to talk about the humanitarian and national security crisis, I'll be glad to meet with you. President, did he give in to pressure? Did he seem like he wanted to be at the meeting? Walk us through it.
Well, I think the president thinks it's important to talk to governors. I certainly hope he does, particularly one that I may have been a bit of a thorn in his side through the years, but I've tried to do it in a respectful way, in a thoughtful way, and what I think is right for the people of the state of Texas, and in this case, what's right for America. I didn't want to just go show up on the ramp in Austin, Texas, and shake his hand and say, welcome to Texas, Mr. President, when the fact is we have a humanitarian crisis on our hands on the southern border, and the president needs to be engaged. The president he's coming to Texas. He's 311 miles from Austin to McAllen. I mean, Air Force One's a pretty fast ride.
He's used it quite a bit, $44 million worth, according to the last estimate. Let me ask from this standpoint. You requested specific things for him, and the president responded. What did you ask for, and what did he say?
And the president said that all of these, philosophically, he said he agreed with all of these. The first was to put the National Guard to secure the border. And we know how to secure the border. Steve McCraw, the director of the Department of Public Safety, we've done enough surges. We know how to put the resources on the border to drive down the criminal activities astoundingly low. I mean, it's amazing what happens when you surge in, when you show that force, if you will, then the cartels and the other illegal activities drop down considerably. I mean, amazingly low, Sean.
So you can effectively control the border.
You can secure the border, and that's what we shared with him today. I said, Mr. President, you can secure the border. We've done it. We'll show you how to do it. But I said, you really can't do it unless you allow the National Guard to come in and to play a very prominent and visible role, move that Border Patrol. And he agreed with this philosophical thing. I'm not sure the president understood that Border Patrol is sitting back about 40-45 miles now with their checkpoints. So when the illegal activity occurs, whether it's drug running or whatever it might be, and people are apprehended, and we're not interested in apprehension. We're interested in prevention. And that's the reason that being on the border, our DPS troopers, that surge that we put into
You're
place,
up close. You're
we're
on the border.
Tomorrow,
yes.
You're going to be on the border.
I'm out with you.
In the river.
We're going to be in the river. We're going to be up in the air. We're going to be out on a boat, and we're going to go up close and see it. Is this the trip that we're going on tomorrow? Is that the trip that the president should be taking?
He would be very well served. Not only politically, because he thinks it's a political photo op. It's not. It's about real people and real issues, a humanitarian crisis that he has the ability to stop.
Let me ask you about that, because the president repeatedly mentioned the supplemental. He's requesting of Congress, what, $3.7 billion for this specific issue.
And I might add, less than 2% of it is for border security.
Okay, that's the point. If you mentioned a humanitarian crisis. If this is a national security issue, in other words, if people...
Which it is as well.
If it is, would he not then therefore have the authority and the responsibility, frankly, to secure the border for national security reasons? And couldn't he do that on his own?
I certainly think he can. I think that he could direct the DOD to put Title 32, which is where the federal government pays for these. And he keeps going back to that, you know, the Republicans in Congress just won't work with me, and they have to fund this $3.7 billion bill. And, you know, I was like, Mr. President, you can deal with this. You can unilaterally direct the Department of Defense to put those troops on the border, to do that work. And he starts talking about a philosophical issue that he may or may not have with that. And we're past that. We want to send the message to those Central American countries, to those families down there that are hearing messages, if you'll just send your children up to the Texas border, have them cross, they can stay in America.
Let me ask you this. He said parents need to know that it is dangerous and it's unlikely their kids will stay and the majority of kids will be sent back. When you look at the money, Senator Coburn said for $8 million, you can fly every kid home and reunite them with their parents. Yeah. Why do you think he's requesting all that money if none of it's going to solve the underlying problem, which is that the border's wide open?
So the supplemental from my, look, I haven't gotten into the weeds on this, but from my perspective, the supplemental isn't about securing the border. The supplemental is about something else.
What do you think?
You'll have to get the president to tell you what he wants those dollars for.
The likelihood of that, Governor, is not very high. But I mean, $3.7 billion is a lot of money.
It is a huge amount of money. But again, Sean, when you start talking about less than $100 million of that is going to go for border security?
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Let me ask you this. So you got to spend a lot of time with the president. Give us your read on him. Does he understand the severity of the problem? Does he seemed to be kind of complaining a lot about Republicans, blaming them. Yeah. If everybody agrees, and you said the president agreed to secure the border, and the Republicans agree to secure the border, why don't we secure the border and do the one thing that everyone agrees on and then deal with the other issues later?
And this isn't a Democrat issue or a Republican issue. This is an American issue. I mean, when you have Henry Cuellar, you had two other...
He's joining us later.
Two other congressmen from the Valley, Vela and Hinojosa, that both sent a letter to the president asking him to come. So this is a bipartisan ask, and it ought to be a bipartisan fix. And I think that's the thing that stuns me as a governor who has with Democrats and Republicans in Austin, Texas, is I don't always get everything I want. As a matter of fact, I can't think of anything that I got 100% of. And the president needs to address this issue.
Is he playing politics here?
We got
to take a break, but
the president can fix this unilaterally with a direct order to the DOD to put the National Guard, and not a more powerful message can be sent to Central America than that.
All right, we got to take a Texas tonight with Governor Rick Perry. That was administration officials telling us time after time the border's secure, and the president, who said he doesn't want to play politics with this, talking about moats and alligators. Yes. What's your reaction?
That's the same president that said Al-Qaeda's on the run. And, I don't know whether he's inept or there's something else going on, as I've said before. But the fact is the border's not secure. We have a humanitarian crisis on our hands now because the border is not secure. And the president needs to understand that the single most important thing that he can do is put the National Guard on the border to coordinate with local law enforcement, with our state law enforcement, with the Border Patrol, and you can secure the border, because we've done it before. Steve McCraw, the Department of Public Safety Director, he knows how to do this. We have done it in different sectors.
Bring people inside the room, because you're faith-based leaders, you're in the room, the president's there, you had this little public showdown about meeting on the tarmac or not. Bring us inside the room, your observations, your insights, your read of this man, read of him and his understanding of what we're talking about here.
Yeah. You know, the president, I think the president was engaged as I was discussing with him. I did a lot of listening.
Likes to talk a lot.
And the president, you know, he let me know what his feelings were about these things and what the fixes were, and I injected where I could. And the fact is, I don't know whether he heard what I said, and because a leader acts. And what I haven't seen out of this president are actions that make me think he understands what's going on. It's one of the reasons I want him to come to the border, because I think he really needs to see how the interaction with these different law enforcements and the addition of the National Guard could secure that border. And I think if the president would see that with his own eyes and he would act on it, you can't talk about it, you have to act, Mr. President. That's what leadership is.
We got health issues. We've got gang members. We've got drugs crossing the border. Now we have talk of militia members maybe coming down to do the job that the federal government's not doing. Sure, that's not something you want to have happen, is it?
No, it's not. And, you know, we have now supplemented our appropriation. We've spent over $500 million since 2005 on the border, Texas taxpayers' dollars, to do the job that the federal government should have been doing. Another $1.3 million a week on top of that. And, you know, the president can address this. He can easily address this. I don't understand his pushback when it comes to, well, we've got to pass this supplemental bill before we can do that. Mr. President, if you care about securing the border, you can direct the DOD to make those 1,000 National Guard troops available, and that would send the powerful message. You want to send some symbolic messages down to Central America and say, you no longer can send your kids up here because they can't get in.
Do you think he sent the message to come? Is he responsible?
Well, I think the policy, I mean, the nuances of the policies, when it's catch and release, when it's that if you're from another country outside of Mexico, then you're going to be treated differently and you can stay here for up to 2 years. Of course, those are messages that very quickly get transported back to Central American countries. And so the failure of this administration to secure the border, I wrote them a letter in I handed him a letter in 2010 talking about the border problem that we had and the lack of security there. We wrote a letter in 2012 talking specifically about these unaccompanied alien children. And Governor, if you want to fix this,
well, let me ask you about this, because I would look at the VA issue, and if I heard, and I were president, which by the way everybody knows would never happen, I would set up a 1-800 number because vets are dying and we made them a promise and that promise isn't being fulfilled, and I would make sure vets were in desperate need of care that we were neglecting would be taken care of within at least a week. It seems the president doesn't ever have that sense of urgency. Are you saying that this is an urgent issue that needs to be addressed within weeks, months? What are you telling him?
I think you could have 1,000 National Guard troops on the border, the message sent well before that, but in 30 days actually have them in place, and the message would be overpowering back to Central America that you no longer can put your kid on a train, put them on a bus, send them up with a coyote, and have them come into the United States because that border is now secure. That's the most humane thing that we can do. I mean, if you want to address this issue of all of this human cost, the most powerful thing that the President of the United States can do is put them...
Parents with kids.
Don't let them be separated to begin with.
Governor, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you being here.